Hello everyone, Austin with the Limestone Library here with another chess video. I wanted to take a second in this video to look at a few different endgames, so it will just be a bit of a quicker video. Um, but the endgames that I want to look at, they're very basic and they're very important. So if you do play like that Paul Morphy guy that we talked about in the last video, it's very important that you can finish the game after you take all of your opponent's pieces. So this first position is a queen and rook checkmate, and it's a very simple checkmate. There's a million ways to do it, but if you're at the end of the game and you're out of time, you don't have very much time left, then it can be tough if you don't know the correct technique. It's very easy to run out of time, and you don't always get a clean and pretty position with nothing else on the board. Usually there's pawns in the way, complicating things just a little bit. So I just want to go over four different endgames today, just showing the proper form to execute these. So, like I said, there's a million ways to do this one. I'm going to show you guys the simple way. We're not going to go for the perfect computer checkmate because that's hard. It's just hard to explain and hard to learn and hard to execute. So we want just a simple basic way to finish the game here. So if you notice, this black king here is stuck in a box. And that box, we can draw the line here. That box looks exactly like this. And as long as we don't mess up, which we shouldn't, we should take great care not to mess up, this king should never be able to go outside of this box. Now you might see if you do ever go to chess tournaments, especially kids tournaments, you might see them play positions like this at the end of the game, and they're checking the king over and over and over again. And this just won't usually produce any results, especially with some of the harder checkmates that we're going to look at today. What we want to do instead is we want to recognize this box, and instead of checking the king over and over again, we want to just make this box a little bit smaller every single turn until we get the king all the way to the edge of the board, and then we can deliver checkmate. So with a queen rook position, the easiest way to do that is simply to get these two pieces together. I like to have the queen. Oh right, I forgot. I forgot that we're playing the computer here. But I like to have the queen on the outside of the rook, and you're gonna see why in just a second. But the basics of it is we're gonna be able to just do a basic staircase checkmate. So this queen gives the king its box right here, and I guess the rook helps out a little bit. So we're going to make the box just a little bit smaller. Black will go ahead and move. And here we're going to go instead of just taking one step, we're going to take a big staircase step with this queen. And this queen and rook, they're just going to take turns, just walking. It's just like left foot, right foot, until the king gets all the way to the edge of the board. And we'll wait for our computer response, and here we go. And this is why the queen is on the outside. If this queen was here, and it's our turn, we can still deliver this checkmate because the queen guards the rook. If they're switched, this queen cannot go here and deliver checkmate because the rook doesn't guard the queen, and the king will just take it. So it's nice to have the queen on the outside. So we'll continue to deliver our checkmate, and that is their only move. And then we will play rook to c1 and get the checkmate. So let's close that out, and we're going to go on to the next one. It's just going to be a little bit harder. Play with the computer here, and we want the white pieces. And this time it's going to be with just king and queen instead of with the queen and the rook. And you might have noticed in the last one, we didn't need to use our king at all. Here we are absolutely going to need to use our king. So we're going to do the same thing. It looks to me like this king is very close to this edge of the board. So we're going to create the king's box first with this move. And now, as long as we're playing sensibly, this king will not be able to escape this box. So now we want to just make it a little bit smaller, since they gave us a little bit of ground here. Instead of going here, they gave away this rank. This file. So we're going to take that, and then we're going to go one more. And now the king is completely cut off just to this last file. And now we're just going to walk our king right in. So we made the box as small as we could, and then we just follow in with our king. And this will be a very quick and easy way to deliver checkmate. Now, something that I do want to show, I'm gonna do a move that's not optimal here. Something that I do want to show. Okay, we're gonna follow with the king here. It's important not to get too greedy with your box. Don't make your box too small, because if you do, you could stalemate your opponent. If we do go here, then our king, our opponent's king, it will not be under attack. It won't be in check, so black can't lose, but it also can't move anywhere, so the game just stops. With no legal move and no losing move, it would then be a draw. So we're not going to do that. We're going to follow with the king here. And then the only move is king to h7, and we will deliver checkmate with the queen. And that's all there is to it for the king-queen checkmate. That one's also simple. They're all simple, but they all take practice because they all can be very tricky. Clear that off, and let's see. Continue from here with the computer there, and we want the white pieces, certainly. And same thing, but with the rook. So this is similar, I think, to the last one that we saw. We're going to cut the king off here, and we're going to give the king its box. And now we're going to try to get our king, we're going to bring our king closer to our rook. And there's multiple ways to do the king-rook checkmate. The one that I really like to teach, because it's incredibly simple, is the one where the king and the rook are right next to each other, and where they're always touching until the end when you deliver checkmate. And when you do it like this, it's very easy to not accidentally give your rook away, because your king is always guarding your rook. So here what we want to do, there's no good rook move that we can do that makes the box any smaller. If we check the king here, like I was talking about earlier, we let the king out of the box. So we absolutely do not want to do that. We have to be very careful, and instead play this move, continue guarding our rook, and this forces the black king to move away. So now we're going to make the box just a little bit smaller. And there's no rook move that makes the box smaller. This gives away the rook. This lets the king out. And so that means that we need to move our king. So let's go here. It doesn't really matter either. We could go here or here. Both of them are going to deliver checkmate eventually. I have a feeling they might make us come over here anyway. We'll see. Okay, so the king goes there. And what I'm going to do is... no, we'll stick... I was going to play this check because it pushes the king back to one of these squares, and that's a very easy way to get the mate. But I want to follow the guidelines that I gave you guys. So we're going to make the box smaller once again, and we are going to have to end up running our king over this way. So let's go here. Okay. And we can't move our rook to make the box any smaller, so we should move our king closer to where we need it to be, closer to the corner. Okay, and let's make that box just a little bit smaller. Sure. And then king here. And here we're put into a tricky spot where we want to deliver the checkmate. This is what this checkmate typically always looks like. The kings are perfectly opposed to each other with one square in between, and you deliver the rook check to cover the entire last row. But we can't do that because, well, they just take our rook. If we check the king here, the king runs away. That's pretty simple. We do also have to be careful. If we check the king and they go into the corner, and we make a king move thinking like, okay, let's just continue restricting, you can stalemate the king, the opponent's king, very easily with a guarded rook on this square and the king in the corner. So you do have to be very careful about that. So we can't go over here. We can't go this way because then the king will just escape. So what we have to do is a little bit of a weird move. It's a waiting move, or a burn move. Because what we want to do is we want to create this exact position, but we want black to move. We want to force black to move into the corner. So we're going to move here, which is basically the same position as the last position, but black has to move into the corner, and then we'll deliver checkmate with the rook there. So these last two are especially important. This king rook checkmate, the king queen checkmate. It's very common to be winning by these pieces. Um, the king queen one especially, because if you're playing someone who's very close in skill level with you, uh, you might only beat them by a pawn or two, and maybe that's the pawn that gets to the end of the board. You queen it, maybe they capture the other one, and and you only have one queen. This is not very uncommon. It's that checkmate is very important to know. You have to be able to finish the game there. So speaking of having one pawn over your opponent, we will move on to this endgame, and we want the white pieces. And here, yeah, we have to work a little bit harder. It's just king and pawn versus king. So this one is incredibly different. We're going to be talking about a different technique here because our goal, of course, is to get the pawn all the way to the end of the board safely so that we can promote to a queen and then win the game. So to do this, there's a few different things to remember. What a lot of people will do is they'll push the pawn like they're going to somehow sneak it past their opponent if they move it fast enough. And this is just not the way to do it. The first thing that we need to do, and by far the most important thing to do in king-pawn endings, when you're winning, when you're attacking, is to get your king in front of your pawn. So the first thing that we'll do is move our king here, and we want our king far in front of our pawn. The second thing that you want to do is you want to get opposition. And opposition is when the kings get, at least in our case, it's when the kings, they're going to get a little bit closer to each other, and we want to move to a square that puts an odd number of squares in between the two kings if you draw a straight line. So again, opposition is when we want to move to a square that, if you draw a straight line, puts an odd number of squares in between the two kings. And why do we want opposition? What is opposition? Opposition is simply, it's an endgame technique to push around your opponent's king. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to show you, I want to promote my pawn here, but if my opponent's king just sits here all day, then I can't. But what we're going to do is we're going to push their king off of that square with our king and take control of it. So if we're being incredibly technical here, moving to this square would give us opposition because there's an odd number of squares in between the two kings if you draw a straight line. Now, we don't need to move to that square because we can move here and then we can get opposition later. And it's also more important just to be far in front of the pawn. But we'll just go ahead and make this move. Now, after we do get opposition, they don't let us do it on this turn. That's a good move, a good defensive move. After we do get opposition, the third thing that we want to do is we want to shoulder our opponent's king by controlling the queening square. More on that later. That one's a little harder to explain without a visual. So let's just move forward here. Again, we want to be far in front of our pawn, and this is why. Our opponents defended well. They're stockfish level 8, so that makes sense. They've defended well, and they took the opposition away from us. So again, what they did, they moved to a square where if you draw a straight line in between the two kings, there's an odd number of squares in between. So they have the opposition. They're pushing our king around. So we either have to go to the side or backwards. We don't want to do that. We want to go forward. That's how we are going to promote our pawn. We have to go forward. The good thing for us is our king is far in front of our pawn, and we can just move our pawn. And now it's their turn, and we have the opposition because of that burn move that we played. So we got our king in front of our pawn. That was number one. Number two, we got opposition. Number three, we need to shoulder by controlling the queening square. That's what we're going to do right now. Our opponent had to move away from this defensive square. They couldn't just say pass and sit there all day. They had to move because we got the opposition. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take that square away from them. We don't want them to go back to that square. Then they'll defend us. And now we can get the opposition again by moving here. And they have to move their king again, and we'll do the same thing. We're going to take that square away from them once again. And it's hard for people to do this without being taught. Our pawn is so far away from us, but it's okay. Our opponent can't get to it. The king only moves one square at a time. It would go there. We would move our pawn here, and they cannot approach the pawn because the king controls this square, and the pawn would control this square. So, same thing here. We're going to get the opposition. King moves. All right, and now we could go here, but it'll get a little rocky. The king moves forward, we push, and then the king moves forward again, and then they're stopping us. We would have to go back, and it's a little bit slower. So instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and push our pawn now. And it's a computer, so the computer's running for the hills because they know they've lost. If they had gone here, which is the logical human move to make here, we would simply push the pawn. They would move. If they move to this side, we would go here to control the queening square. If they move to the other side, we would move here to control the queening square. And then our pawn would just walk right on down. And there's nothing that they could do about it because we would be controlling every single square to advance our pawn to. So here, if we go here, we kind of run into the same problem that we had before. Our opponent would go here, and then our pawn cannot advance. So we're just going to advance our pawn. We could also move our king forward, but we'll just advance the pawn here. Okay. This is actually a good way to defend. Yeah, if we're not careful and we move here, then our pawn's gone. I've not seen this before, but it's a smart way to defend. It's interesting. It's definitely a new one. We'll just move here. We'll just keep we'll keep the king away from any important squares, and then that way we can just push our pawn, and it's still guarded. Oh no, I was wrong. No, if we move here and they attack our pawn, we can just push it. Yeah, never mind. Don't defend like that. Okay, so now we'll get out of the way like we should have done before. And this is a similar thing. Even if they come here to defend, it doesn't matter. We control every single square that we want. So we just keep on walking our pawn down. And here, and we're going to take a queen. Don't promote to a knight or a bishop thinking that you're cute, because you won't be able to deliver checkmate like that, unfortunately. And let's just make this box a little bit smaller. Keep that king, just like we did before, keep that king inside of it. And now we're going to move our king forward. We could follow it with the queen, but that's not really any quicker, so we're not going to do that. And then let's go here. And we're cutting our queen off here, but they can't really run for the hills, so we have nothing to worry about. Let's make that box smaller, very, very small now, and we will continue following. Come closer with the king. Okay, so they didn't move back, and they can't move there, but they didn't move back and give us the rank. So now we have to take it from them, and we could go either here, here, here. You know, we have a lot of different decisions to make. I'm gonna go here. I want to show you, and this is perfect, I want to show you one last stalemate to avoid. In this position, you might be tempted to move the king here, and you would be very upset to know, if you were playing a game, that is a draw. It would be stalemate. The king would not be in check, so black cannot lose, and they also cannot make any legal moves. The queen covers all these, and the king covers the final square. And that works whether the king is here, 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 or here. It's all here. It's all stalemate. So you have to be very careful in a position like this. And we just want to very carefully move our queen here, to keep the king like we've been doing on every single checkmate. Keep the king on that last rank, and now we'll follow with the king. And we're gonna get a little fancy to finish it off. We could keep following with the king. That would be a perfectly acceptable way to deliver mate, but we're gonna bring their king back instead. And now their only legal move is this, and we have multiple mates to give. This is the one that looks fun, so we're gonna go ahead and do that one, and finish off the lesson. So, if you followed the video, and you like what you saw, but you're not really sure, okay, if I'm in a game and the pressure's on, can I really deliver those mates, especially the king rook mate? If you want a good place to practice, and I've mentioned this before in previous videos, the learn tab right up here and over to practice, this is the best place to go. There's many places on the internet. This is the best place on this website. And you just want to just click the first one, Peace Checkmates, and it should be the right one. And then we have every mate that we practiced, plus some, in this Peace Checkmates 1 section of the practice section. It has Queen Rook. Oh, it even has the 2 Rook. That's great. And then a few more that are also very helpful. And again, this is one of the first things that you have to learn when you're starting to practice chess. You can take all your opponent's pieces all you want, but if you can't finish the game with checkmate, on an open board, then you're not going to win many games. So it really is just a very invaluable resource, and it does take practice. I've said that the checkmates are simple. I just mean that there's not very many pieces on the board. They can be tricky, so they absolutely take practice to master. So, all right. If you like what you saw, let me know. I'll put my my email and usernames in the description. You can go ahead. You can send me a message. Let me know any future video ideas that you want to see, or if you want to play a game, I'd be happy to do that as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.